All right, so welcome everyone. This will be our very first online lecture of the pro seminar, Biological Basis of Experience and Behavior. And the topic will be about decision neuroscience. Let's use the pointer. Okay, so my name is Lei, the instructor or the teacher of this course. Pronunciation is just Lei. It's very simple and straightforward. And I am now doing a postdoc at the Social, Cognitive, and Affective Neuroscience unit, the SCAN unit. And this unit is led by Professor Klaus Lam. And this unit belongs to the Department of Cognition, Emotion, and Methods in Psychology. So this is a new name. Before it's like the basic psychology and psychological research. Okay, good. Here at the bottom corner, you will see my email address and my website. I have a website about my research, and I also have my Twitter account. Okay, good. Let's get started. So the very first claim I want to make is that we make decisions every day. Okay, so we use neuroscience to study decisions, but what is decision? Actually, we make decisions every day, right? There are a few examples about decisions. So you can also ask yourself, what are decisions? What are different types of decisions you make every day, for instance? So one example can be that you want to choose from some restaurants in the surrounding. So for instance, if you use Google Map, and you type in the keyword, let's say Italian restaurants, and then you will see some options provided by the Google Map. So here you will see 4 options. So this is the very first property of decision making. So you have some options to choose from, right? So if I only give you one choice and you say you have to go there, so you don't have to make any decision. So in this case, there are multiple choice alternatives that you will choose from. And then another property is that all those choices or all those options, they have different aspects or features. So for example, in this case, we have ratings, we have the price, right? So in this case, for example, the rating is pretty high and the price level is okay, so €2. And then this one down here, the rating is also pretty high, it's above average, and it seems a little bit more expensive than the other 3. So another interesting thing to look at is also, for example, if you are hungry at late night, maybe this is good because it closes at midnight, this one even better, so this one might not be a good choice. So if you are hungry, now it's 10:30 in the evening, and you want to go out to eat, so the first option, so this one might not be a good idea. So as you could imagine, there is another aspect, so which is your current need. So in this case, the time is your current need. You want food immediately at late night. So then this one might not be a good choice, even though it's highly rated and price is okay. Good. Another example I can give to you is that, so basically, when I was making the slides, so I see also, in this case, many choice options, and then I will decide which one to use, okay? So the same idea here. There are multiple choice alternatives. In this case, black and white, most of them, and then here with color, and some of them with this annoying stripes, and this one, the background is very clean, and then this one, the background is very clean. And another property that I think when I was making the decision is that I have to decide which icon here fits into the entire visual property, the looking of my presentation. In the end, I didn't choose any of them because none of them fits very well into my entire visual feature of the presentation. So the third example is like, yeah, you also know this software, and this decision is very simple. So here you either say yes or no, right? So there is also a choice option, and then you have the decision to say yes or no. This situation is a little bit simplified. So comparing with this one, you have multiple options to choose from. You choose one of them out of the 4. So here you have one option, but what you will decide is to say yes or no. Okay, anyway, those are all the decisions we make every day. And I will just repeat myself. We make decisions every day. Good. And then after I introduce a few examples regarding decision making. So now what you can do is to type in the chat box what comes to your mind, some keywords or phrases, for example. What comes to your mind when talking about decision making? Okay, now you can open your chat box and then type your response, for example. Okay, those are very interesting responses. So I will I can't read everything. There's a lot, and I will pick a few. So for example, cost-benefit analysis, time relevant. So this example I gave, so time relevant, and priming, and free will, logical thinking, heuristics, manipulation, outcome. Yeah, outcome is also very interesting, but important, very important. Value-based, yes, there will be a topic about value-based decision-making. We will talk about that. Analysis, game theory. This is also very important. So game theory is a kind of type of decision-making framework that is studied pretty extensively, not only in economics, but also in psychology. Reward mechanism, yes, very good. Competitive gaming, yes, this is also decision-making. Being overwhelmed with options, that's also one option. So because when there are way too many choice options, you might feel overwhelmed. Food, yes, good. Neuroeconomics, okay, good, that's the keyword of the course. Not being able to decide, this can also be a problem. Yeah, very nice. So this will be our very first interaction, and thanks a lot for all those responses. So all those are correct, and so it seems like you all more or less know a little bit about decision making, right? Because we make decisions every day, and who doesn't know decision making? Perfect. And another question I would like to ask you is, for example, right in the chat box again. So how, in your mind, do you think people study decision-making in the lab? So if you participate experiment, if they study decision-making, how that might look like? So how do people study decision-making in the lab? Yeah, a tip regarding this question is to think about the research method. So how do people study decision making, right? Using which kind of method or technique or measurement? Okay, good. So everyone is responding. Perfect. So I saw from my studies, neuroimaging, reaction time, very good. And eye tracking to study the eye movements. And case study, yes, case study is also very important. EEG, yes, the brain currents. And lesion studies, behavioral measurements, semi-experimental study, very good. Yeah, this one is very important. So people in the lab will give people, so let me frame it another way, to researchers, let me be specific. Researchers in the lab give participants options and then see how those people will decide, right? So this is the idea. And then which part of the brain are activated through EEG, for example. Yeah, this is a very good answer. Questionnaire, yeah, questionnaire is also very important. So questionnaire usually is used to study preference. So maybe I will ask you questions regarding how much risk you would like to take in different situations. You will rate yourself on a scale between 1 and 7, for instance. Those are questionnaire studies. Yeah, perfect. Very good. So you know quite well about how to study decision making in the lab. Okay, I give you 2 examples about studying decision making in the lab. I will not give you the answer, just to show you the example. So there's some research about a game theory related phenomenon or paradigm, which is called prisoner's dilemma. So let's say there are 2 prisoners. They are isolated, self-isolated in 2 cells independently. So they cannot talk to each other. They don't know what the other will behave. So they have 2 choices to choose from, to decide, both of them. They or each of them. So each of them, they can either confess or remain silent. So this is person B, and for prisoner B, this is prisoner A. So both of them, they can either do this, confess, or remain silent. And then depends on the combination of their choices, and then they will receive different outcomes. For example, if both of them, they confess, both of them, they will have to stay in there for 5 years. And here, if both of them, they remain silent here, then both of them, they only have to stay there for 1 year. But if one is doing confess, the other one is remaining silent, and then the person who confesses will be released immediately, and then the other one will stay there for like 20 years. So this is the same, right? So the rule here usually is that during this kind of the game, so if imagine that you are a participant, you know this rule, you know how or what will happen given the combination of the situation. So you know this, but you don't know what the other person will respond, right? And then you make a decision between here or here. And researchers study how often participants make this decision, confess, or this decision, remain silent. And when this study is being conducted, participants could lay in the MRI scanner. So at the same time, when they are making the decision, their brain activity is also recorded. And then to see which brain area is much more associated with the choice the participants made. So this is a simple experiment, okay? And we will talk about this, not very recent. We will talk about the prisoner's dilemma experiment at nearly the very end of the semester. Because before that, we have to lay some foundation regarding the basic knowledge about decision making. The second example I give is this classic paradigm in moral decision making. So let's say there is a tram going here, and it could, if you don't, this is you, for example, if you don't do anything, the tram will go straight and then 5 people will die. And if you do something, for instance, 5 people's life will be saved, but 1 person's life instead will be taken, so this person will be killed. So this is a moral decision making. So you have to have a balance. It's either let it go or maybe do another choice to change the outcome. So these questions can also be asked in the lab. So basically, very, very easily, this picture can be shown to participants. And then the participants will just choose either to let it run through or to make another choice to change the direction of the tram. Perfect. I saw a question and it asks, does that have a lot to do with the study of motivation? Which one are you talking about? It's Lena, right? Which one are you talking about? This study or the one before, the prisoner's dilemma? Both? Okay. Yeah, that is. So especially this one, for example. So usually these kind of studies are goal-directed. So there's a term called goal-directed behavior or goal-directed decision-making. So the goal here for both of the prisoners, for example, is to stay as short as possible in the prison. So maybe this, for instance, but you never know what the other person will respond. So then you will have to, as a participant, evaluate what the outcome or the outcome will be, regardless of the choice of the other prisoner. Okay, so this is kind of the goal, and then this is also the motivation, because I want to reach the goal. So then that's my motivation. Yeah, it's more or less the outcome influences the motivation. So the question is, if not everyone can see it, the question is the outcome, the motivation influences the outcome. So I would say it's the other way around. So the outcome influences the motivation. Yeah, probably also social connection. Yeah. Good. I will just proceed. So yeah, we will here talk about the goal. Another example of goal-directed decision-making. So imagine that those are slot machines. So those are called slot machines, right? So if you play, pull this lever, and then depending on which combination you will achieve, you will get different amount of money, for example. And let's imagine those slot machines are not the same. So one of the slot machine will give you money more often than the other one. So let's say this one will give you money more often on average, this one not. Then which one will you choose? You will choose this one, right? Because you know that this one will give you money more often. But let's put this example into another scenario. So now you choose this one, it is because you know it is better. It gets reward pretty often than the other one. What if you do not know which is better, which is worse? So imagine that those are two slot machines and it located in a casino, and then you step into a casino and you go to the slot machines. They look the same. Every aspect is the same. And you will basically play around it, right? You have no idea which one is better, which one is worse. So what you can do is to play it, and then to see on average in the long run. For example, if you play 10 times or 20 times, based on the outcome, you will calculate which one is winning more often than the other. And then you could choose the one with the higher chance to win money after learning. So then this is a phenomenon, or it can be explained by a theory called reinforcement learning. So if you have heard about that, so if you follow some news in the field of artificial intelligence, of machine learning, they talk about this concept, reinforcement learning, a lot. So to put it very, very simply, is that you make a choice, you receive the feedback or the outcome. and then you use this feedback to evaluate your choice, and then you make further or future choices. So this is the idea. So the simple idea is like this. It can be very complicated. So if you know the deep minds, so this AlphaGo, the goal to play the Go game that wins against the human. So that's one. The central idea is also a reinforcement learning. To be specifically, that's the deep learning model, but the idea is the same. So the Go, AlphaGo plays the stone on the map, and then depends on the feedback, the machine will, AlphaGo will evaluate the action, and then to learn, to future improve himself. Good. And let's say the environment now is reversed. I'm not interested in getting money. I'm interested in losing money. So even though this sounds stupid, but let's say there is just this person and he or she is interested in losing a lot of money. Okay, good. So the rule now is the same. So for example, if through some experience, through learning, you learn that this one gives you money more often, this one does not. Previously, if you want to win money, you choose the left one because in general it gives you money. But since now, because you want to lose money, then you will choose the opposite. You will choose the one that gives you money less often. So this is behavior change depending on your goal, right? So simply put, if you want to win money, choose the better option. If you want to lose money, even though that doesn't make sense, you will choose the worse option. And in experimental design or in experiments, usually participants will use buttons, just say left and right, to indicate their choices. Perfect. And then one more example about decision making. Here I give you two choice options. So we already talked about multiple choice alternatives. Many food choices, many number of restaurants, okay? So then I give you two choices. One is chocolate brownie, the other one is cucumber smoothie, for example, or avocado, doesn't matter. So now, write in the chat box which one you will choose from. Will you choose chocolate brownie or will you choose the greenish smoothie? Yeah, that makes total sense. So I think most of you chose smoothie. This is quite surprising because when I was giving the same lecture previously and when I was asking the same question in the class to ask them to raise hands, and most of the students, they chose chocolate brownie. But now, since everyone is at home and because it's so easy to gain some weight, I guess it makes so much sense that everyone now at this moment, at right this moment, is choosing green smoothie to keep healthy. Perfect. Awesome. So this is basically the perfect example to illustrate this idea, which is called like goal-directed decision making. I mentioned this already, right? So your decision heavily depends on the goal. And another person, I saw the response is like, depends on what I ate before. And right now I feel like eating smoothie or drinking smoothie. So that's the goal. So if you are like hungry and maybe you work very hard, you want to get a chocolate brownie to reward yourself, you want to get some food to reward yourself, maybe chocolate brownie is the better option. But maybe now in this current situation, when everyone is like stay at home and so easy to gain, it's more likely to gain some weight. So chocolate smoothie, and not chocolate smoothie, maybe that exists. So this greenish smoothie is a better option for most of you. Cool. So I repeat here the two concepts because there was a question. So here on this slide, we are talking about goal-directed decision-making, okay? On the previous slide, when we were talking about the slot machines, it is also a type of goal-directed decision-making, but the specific theory or the model that I mentioned is called reinforcement learning. I will type that in the chat box so that you have the idea, reinforcement learning. Good. Goal-directed decision-making and reinforcement learning. Okay, we are talking about the goals. So now let's talk about the goal of this course. So this seminar, right? This pro seminar, this introductory seminar. So the goal of the course, I have something like to have a basic understanding of various topics in decision neuroscience. Even though here I say various, but we will focus on 4 of them. I will tell you later. And to have another goal is to have conceptual knowledge about research methods in decision neuroscience, or maybe just in general psychological science. And then later, the next goal is about to learn important research skills. For example, to do literature search, to practice your scientific presentation skills, and then also scientific writing. And then the last one is to be able to design a simple experiment. I will talk about that. So this is one of our final assignments. So these here are the goals of the course, and there are something that I will not talk about. So pay attention to the type of the course. So it is a seminar, it is not like a whole lecture. It's not the case that I will talk from the very beginning to the very end. So then it means we will have some papers, for example, to discuss. And the entire course is not a entirely very systematic introduction. So you cannot get a full knowledge about decision making. So it's more or less that we choose important topics in this field, and then we make discussions. And the aim of the pro seminar is that you as early psychology students have some picture about what can be done, what is going on in this field. So after this seminar, I wish that you could at least know, well, when people are talking about decision making, or when people are talking about decision neuroscience, what that is, so how people are doing experiments, and what are the main methods, or what are the main conclusions. And if you are interested, you could go deeper, right? By reading some papers, for example, also like by applying the research skills you will get required from this seminar. Good. So those are the goals of the seminar. And as we know, that's a clear goal depends on knowledge and expectations, right? So that's the purpose of the pre-course survey I sent around a few weeks ago, and also very recently, so that you have the second chance to fill in. So I sent the questionnaires to 37 registered students plus 2 who haven't got registered, but who were very interested in. So then in total 39. but now currently we have 42 people. So maybe there are some new people who are interested in this course, so welcome. Anyway, so I sent this link to 39 people and I received 35. This is pretty high return rate. It's nearly 90%, so many thanks for your first input. I will show you some of the results of the survey, but if you have any spontaneous feedback or questions, you are still more than welcome to do so. Good. So now what I will do is to share you with the survey results. So here is the number. We have in total 35 responses. First question is very important. Have you ever taken courses on the following topics? So experimental design. More than half said no. So okay, good. We will talk about this. Mostly this is important. Most of you have taken the course about statistics. Very good. And biological basis of behavior, more than half, 25, very good. And here I just ask you what you know about regarding different research methods, brain imaging, eye tracking, and so on and so forth. So most of you have heard about that already, and even some of you have used this a few times. For example, eye tracking, this is very good. So according to the previous question I asked you, when I asked you to type in the chat box, it seems like you do know some research methods in the field of psychology, for instance. And the statistical test, so here is very good. So many of you have really experienced using t-test here, one sample, two sample, and paired. And the NOVA, maybe not too many. So we will also talk about it later. This is very good. So well done. So many of you have used Pearson's correlation and also a simple regression. Perfect. So this is, we do not really talk about programming languages, but this is something I'm curious to know how much psychology students might know at their second year study. So here, some of you know Python, MATLAB is very good, also R. Okay, good. The other questions, I prepared those in the slides. So let's look at here. So I asked you to describe your knowledge about experimental design, right? So it seems like most of you know at least some knowledge. So here, good, either good or basic, basics regarding experimental design, but more or less it seems like you know the theory, you know the idea, you know how experimental design works, you know some concepts here, concepts regarding experimental design, but perhaps you have not implemented, designed, conducted experiments, okay? So this is the current stage, I guess, you have so far. The next question is your knowledge of statistics. So you know some basics, very good, basic again, and you have used it quite a few times. So according to this survey, most of you have used t-test. This is very good. And I do love this attitude. So some of you do have some in-depth knowledge. I do appreciate that. This is very good. So it's similar to the idea of experimental design. So you know the concept, you know how it works, you know when to use it, but perhaps not too many of you have applied statistical tools or analysis to real data. So this is the current stage. This is what I perceived from your feedback. This is the important part, your expectations, right? And we are talking about your expectations, and then we could see if the seminar, this current course, will potentially meet your expectations. Biological foundations, that's the name of the course, neuroscience, decision neuroscience. There are two parts, decision making and neuroscience, of course. Research skills, something about research, and also, for example, like economics, because they are decision making is very closely linked to economics. Neuropsychology, yes, very good. So here, basically, you expect to know more about decision-making, of course, and develop the biological foundations, right? Neuroscience, and then to gain some research skills in terms of how to do it. And I also record that from your feedback, I also record that from one person's response, he or she is not really interested too much into the topic, but is more interested in practicing English skills, to listen to lectures, to listen to presentations, and also to give presentations orally. And this is also good, right? This makes sense because not everyone has the same interest, and we could see how we could meet everyone's expectation within the same classroom with a variety of backgrounds. I make a 15 seconds break and you can think about it. Any questions, any feedback so far? What I will do next is to give you the plan or the structure of this seminar. So what will happen from next week on? So which topic we will cover per week. So, and I will also later today tell you what the assignment will be and how you will get graded. Apart from those questions, what you have in mind so far? Any feedback, instantaneous idea, questions as well? There is a question about, will there be any calculation in this course? Calculation of utility for decision making? I don't think so, sorry about that. So we will talk about paper that calculates utility, but I will not really show you how utilities are calculated in the course. So it more or less depends on how that person will present this paper. So the course, there will be presentations, right? There will be presentations, and there will be utility function, utility calculation. And then this then really depends on how that person will present this paper. Another question is, do we need some statistic program? I would say no. So there will, at the very end, there will be a group project. I will tell you later in detail. The general idea is that you work in a group to propose an experimental design. You propose an experiment that you want to do. But this is a proposal, right? You do not really have to do it, you just propose it. And the statistical program is not needed. Okay, next question. Will we talk about the books we should read? Yes, I will talk about that. Any other questions? How do we present? Yeah, I will talk about that. What are the requirements for presentations? Yeah, I will also tell you that. Okay, good. Any other questions? Five more seconds. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, let's proceed. Here, this is the schedule of the lectures, starting from today, because we didn't have anything last week, right? So then we only have 13 lectures. Today, introduction and overview, you will get the whole picture at the very beginning. And then from next week, so I told you we will have a double 2-unit session next Friday, okay? So because in this way, we meet only one more time before Easter, and then let's see how everything develops after Easter, 22nd of April. But basically, next Friday we meet at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we will have a longer session. We have 15 minutes break in between, and then that's it for the online sessions. And then there will be some reading you have to read, and then that's it. The topic of the second lecture is about research methods here, research methods in decision making. So even though I'm sure that most of you know what behavioral measurement is, what eye tracking is, what neuroimaging is, more or less, maybe even though some surface knowledge is good, right? So even though I guess most of you, or maybe nearly all of you, have some more or less knowledge about that, and I will briefly talk to you regarding the research methods that is used in decision neuroscience. Okay, so that's the second lecture. No presentation, just me talk, and then you can ask questions. And then the third lecture is about experimental design and statistical inference. So also I know that nearly all of you have taken some courses regarding statistics, and even though not too many have taken courses regarding experimental design, so I will have a 1.5 hour session and briefly talk about experimental design. So for example, between subject design, within subject design, longitudinal design, and something like that. So that everyone, so after lecture 2 and 3, just next Friday, after next Friday, I hope that I can bring every person on the same page, okay? Starting from lecture 4 here, we will go to details topic by topic. So the first one is what is the so-called value in simple choices. So I talked about a decision. So why you make a choice, so why you make decision, it is perhaps because the value of one option is higher than the other. You value one option more than the other, and then you are more likely to choose the one you value, right? So this is the simple idea. What is the so-called value in decision making? And then here, the second topic is about risky choices, risk preference, and intertemporal choice. So these are, in theory, 2 separate topics, but they can be very well related. And we can talk about why this can be related during the lecture. One example I can give you now regarding risky decision making is that you have now 2 options. One is that you have 100% chance to get €5. So this is sure, for certain, you will get €5, okay? And then you have another option, which is a gamble. So the gamble, it says you have 50% of the chance to win €20, but at the same time, you have 50% of the chance to lose €10. So it's half-half. And then I will ask you basically to make a choice. Do you want to be safe, to be sure, or are you willing to risk yourself for losing 10, but at the same time win 20, so half-half. So those are like risky decision-making paradigms. The next topic is about, so since some people from you asked the motivation and the social connection, for example, like that. So here we have an entire session about motivation and emotion in decision-making. So for example, if people are pro-social, they want to help others, for example, like right now, people need help, you can ignore them, but maybe people don't behave this way. People are a little bit depend on the person, but usually I guess people are pro-social. Why people help the others? Those are the motivation, right? The pro-social motivation. And then people could also, researchers can also study motivations in the lab. So we can also discuss how motivations and also emotion are studied in the lab in decision making. The next one is about social decision making. This is important and interesting in the sense that we make decisions every day, but we do not make decisions very often on their own. We make decisions in social contexts when there are multiple people involved, not only you yourself, but maybe your friends, your family, your partner. So those will affect people's decision when they are placed in social context. The next topic here, this one, is a little bit applied in the sense that we can see how neuroscience can be used to help business, for example, consumer neuroscience, marketing. So there is one concept called neuromarketing. So they use neuroscientific tools to design their products, basically to let people buy more often, right? So this is also decision making. So this here we will talk about something called consumer neuroscience or neuromarketing. So there are two questions so far I can respond to that. So one is, will the lessons have a economic focus? No, I would say no. This is more psychological focus and neuroscience. The second question is, does lecture 6 and 7 include altruism? Yeah, one of the study, I guess, yes. One of the study we will talk about, that study covers this topic. Because that's pro-social, right, by definition. Lecture 9, okay, this one, we will have a special lecture, perhaps a guest lecture. It's not given by me, it will be given by a colleague of mine, so about open science. So we know that open science is very interesting, but what open science actually means, what that is, how we can do it in practice. So we have a special open science lecture. And then lecture 10 here, we will have a introduction to reinforcement learning. So as I said, reinforcement learning is deeply, closely related to artificial intelligence and machine learning. It's a little bit maybe math heavy, so I will show you some equations, but just don't have to feel scared. Just some simple equations and you can get used to it very quickly, okay? So here is not only I tell you what reinforcement learning is, so I tell you that a little bit, and then we will see how research teams, researchers can use the reinforcement learning theory to study decision making. And the next one, and actually the last one, topic in this seminar is game theory, right? So like the prisoner's dilemma in the social context. Game theory inspired decision-making paradigms. Okay, good. Here, these two topics, reinforcement learning and game theory inspired decision-making paradigms, they are a little bit more advanced topics. The first four here, value decision-making, risky and intertemporal, motivation, and social decision-making, they are the four main topics, okay, of this seminar. And then the last one, lecture 12 and 13, we will have group presentations. I will tell you, I will explain what that is. Okay, good. Any questions so far? So far, so good. 5 seconds. Yes, what are, again, the main topics? So the one you see from lecture 4 and lecture 7 is 4. There is also slides about that, so don't worry. Good, I'll just proceed. Yeah, this is combined. Let's talk about this very briefly. So our next session is next Friday, the 27th of March. We start at 3 o'clock and 1.5 hour session like usual, and 15 minutes break, and then we get back. Okay. So according to the survey, not everyone of you have responded, but according to at least those who responded, everyone seems okay with the 2-unit session. And actually, even though you have maybe some other duties, for example, you cannot make it, this doesn't really matter, because all those lectures, at least the first 3, will be recorded, and I will post it online, so you can watch it afterwards. So you don't have to feel you will miss anything. You won't miss anything. Yeah, so this is a repetition about the 4 main topics. The first one, value-based decision-making, together with consumer neuroscience. So they are very well related. The second is risky decision-making and intertemporal decision-making. Do you want to have the sure option, or do you want to risk yourself to choose the gamble, for example? The third one is motivation and emotion in decision-making, pro-social motivation, for example. And then the last one is social decision-making, making decisions in social context. Good. And a very brief 1-minute introduction of the special lecture on open science. Open science is related to a phenomenon, or like is a dark side of psychology, for example. It is called the reproducibility crisis. Basically means research studies that are published before cannot be replicated by somebody else. There's a survey by the journal Nature, here, Nature. They ask researchers, do you think there is a reproducibility crisis? And so more than half, they say yes, there is a significant crisis. And here, nearly 40%, they say yes, even though that's slight. So together, if you say 52 plus 38, it is exactly 90% of the people. They think there is at least some kind of more or less reproducibility crisis. And how to improve it, right? How to improve it. And people will practice open science. So here, what that means, we will wait until the special lecture to see what the guest lecturer will bring to us. Good. Now, this is the important part for all of you for this very first session of the seminar. We will now talk about coursework, okay? There are 3 courseworks, or 4, because you see here this as combined. So I will tell you one by one. Paired presentation in class, midterm paper you have to write, group presentation, you work in a group, and then you first present it, and then you write about it, okay? I will talk to you about that. The paired presentation is starting from lecture 4, the main part of this seminar. So the course structure looks like this. From lecture 4, assuming this line is the timeline of 90 minutes, 1.5 hours, and I will first introduce the topic, for example, social decision-making. I will talk about for 15 to 20 minutes what that is, what is important to know. So those is my part. And then after that, we will have 3 paired presentations, and each of them will be 20 minutes. And then lastly, we will have a joint discussion and feedback. So now you might just wonder what this means, right? What is the paired presentation? Okay, so the paired presentation, how that is work. So I know that in the current situation, this might be a little bit challenging, but let me just finish how I thought, what I had in mind, how that will work, and then let's see how we can make it real. So the paired presentation basically means you will present a paper. The paper you will receive 2 weeks beforehand, so that you will have 2 weeks to prepare for it. And the paper, which paper you will present, it is randomly assigned. Okay, so after next week, I will make a random list, shuffle, and I will just randomly assign a paper to you, and then you present that. It's not that you choose, because there are easy papers, there are difficult papers. If you choose, everyone choose easy papers, and then it's a little bit unfair. So what I have in mind is that I will just create a random list, and then I will give you the randomly created assignments. The first few papers will be announced already after next Friday, and assuming we will resume our lecture on the 22nd of April, you will have quite some time, nearly a month, for the first group of people. If you feel nervous, that's totally fine. You will have more time to prepare for your presentations. So the presentation works more or less this way. You prepare a 15-minute presentation in pair, so 2 people, and you can do half splits. So maybe the first person speaks for about 7 to 8 minutes, and then the second person speaks about the rest. So why am I doing this is because when you are preparing for your presentations, it's also a good practice to discuss the idea of the paper. And then to discuss, it's not possible to discuss with yourself, right? It's not so easy. And you can discuss the same paper with your partner, with your classmates. And then you can also learn from each other when doing so. And this is also a practice for jointly present work, a teamwork, group work, right? You maybe will schedule a meeting, and then you meet, you discuss, and then you bring the results finally to the entire class. So what to present in each presentation? Very first of all is to present what is the paper about, what is the topic, right? What is the paper, what is the research question about this paper? And then to answer this research question, what was done from the research team? What is the experimental design, and what were the research methods that is aimed to answer the research question, together with the design, with the task. And then what was the conclusion from that paper? So here, those are what you can get from the paper, right? And then what I also would like to ask you to do is to be a little bit critical. So you can wonder or imagine, or to ask yourself, do the data support their conclusion? Even though this is published work, there might be some critics that you might come up with. So like, what can be improved? Some of the papers are published maybe around 10 years ago, and you can imagine what can be done a little bit differently nowadays, right, after reading the paper. So give some critical comments on that paper. So after these 15 minutes, there will be a question and answer Q&A session. It's very short, so 5 minutes. I will first encourage everyone in the class to ask questions. And then if no questions are coming from the audience, and I will also ask questions, okay? Good. Question regarding this? Well, let me finish the next. Yeah, so everyone have the chance to do it, and there is a video you can watch later. I will also share the slides on Moodle after today. So watch this video to see how to present scientific contents clearly. So this is a very good talk. So this field is maybe microbiology, not really our field, but I think everyone could follow the presentation of the presenter. Okay, this is important. So how can we realize the paired presentation now in 2020 because of the COVID? And plan A is maybe because we start from lecture 4, right? It is the 22nd of April. So maybe we will have physical class. Might be, I'm not sure, nobody knows. So plan A is to do that in class. Plan B is to do screen sharing. We do presentation remotely over Zoom. Zoom is the one now we are using, right? It is pretty easy to use, I would say. So how to do this? Yeah, there's a question from one colleague, one of you. So in this case, if the university is still closed, how we can do it? It is pretty easy, I think. So because if you do a screen sharing, so the first part, if let's say there are two people, right? The first person is speaking, sharing the screen, and then finish his or her part for 7 to 8 minutes. And then the second person will just continue, and then to share the second person's screen to all of us. So the idea is that both of you will have to have the presentation, the PowerPoint, for example, locally on your computer. And then you can just switch, right? I think this shouldn't be very difficult. Another question here I saw is that how detailed do the research methods of the paper have to be explained? So it depends on the balance. It depends on the paper. So you have 15 minutes in total. You will decide. You will have to decide how much detail you have to put, because there are some short papers, in total 4 pages. There are some longer papers, maybe 10, 12 pages. And then depends on the balance. You have to fit in more or less 12 minutes presentation. So later, I will also give you a kind of a structure of the presentation. So I will give you a few questions, and then your presentation basically have to answer the question. For example, what is the topic of that decision making of that paper? Well, this is obvious because we will talk about that paper in that week. We know the topic of the week and then the topic is clear. The second question you can answer from your presentation is that what kind of participants do they use? Do the researchers use? For example, do they use human? Do they use animals? Animal is also very important, animal participants. Or do they use patients, for instance? So you can also, this is also very important, right? And the next question that you will have to provide the answer to is that what research technique is used. Because from lecture 2, we will talk about methods in decision neuroscience, fMRI, EEG, eye tracking, for example. And then you say, well, this paper uses fMRI. And another paper maybe uses eye tracking. So this is quite clear. So you basically have to give the answers to that short questions. Another question is simple. It's like how many participants are used, right? Is it 12, 15, 20, 30? So give a clear picture of what is done by the research team. So this level of detail, I think that's enough. Other questions? I give you some more time to think about it. 10 seconds to think about it. Any questions regarding the presentation, the paired presentation? Good. Okay. No, the question is, do we get to choose our partners? No. So as I said, to make it very fair and transparent to everyone, I will create a random list. So I will create a list to shuffle your order. So you will be randomly paired to another person. It might be that you know that person, that's your friend. It might be is a total stranger to you. But I think this is also a very good practice, right? So you build up some connections, even though you don't know each other before, and then you can still work together. This is important interpersonal skills, not psychology, but interpersonal skills. Other questions? Last chance. Good. I will go on. Yeah, so another thing I ask you is that if some of you are not registered, send me an email afterwards, and I will write to the SSC if I can get you registered, okay? You give me your name, your matriculation number, so that's it. And I will ask them. So the next assignment is about the group project. How does that work? We have the 4 main topics. I repeat again: value-based decision-making, risky choice and intertemporal choice, motivation and emotion in decision-making, and social decision-making, right? We have the 4 topics. I will divide you into small groups. Each group only 5 people. We have so far 40 people, and more or less 4 to 5 or maybe 6 person in the group. Okay, anyway. And then we have the 4 topics. You choose one of the 4 main topics. So this one I do not do shuffle. So maybe you have different interests. I do not want you to work on something you're not interested in. Okay, this is a little bit unfair. So what you do is that you will have to form groups on your own. So how to do it? You basically sign up your interest, which topic you're interested in. I will create a pool on Moodle. So let's say I'm interested in motivation, and then I will give the interest, and then you will be grouped with some other people who are also interested in motivation. And then this way you form groups. There are 4, as I said, 4 topics, but we have 8 groups. That basically means 2 groups will work on the same topic. 2 groups work on value-based decision-making. 2 groups work on risky intertemporal choice. 2 groups work on motivation and emotion, and 2 more groups working on social decision-making. Okay? There are 2 parts about the group project. One is the group presentation. The other one is the group paper. So first of all, the group presentation is that you will first propose an experiment under that topic. So let's say if you are interested in motivation in decision-making, and then you want to study motivation in decision-making, and then you propose an experiment that looks into motivation in decision-making. And you will first talk about what is your motivation to do this, why you do this, why you think this is interesting, and what is the background, what is known from literature, what is not known, and why you want to do this experiment. And specifically say, what is your research question, okay? So the research question, for example, I can come up with a kind of silly example. So let's say pro-social behavior depends on the partner. So if the partner is a stranger, if that is a friend, if that is a family member, people might behave differently in terms of their pro-sociality. So this is the research question, right? How closeness, friends, family, stranger will affect pro-social behavior. So this is like one example. If you want to study that, okay, good. Then propose, design an experiment to study this. What is hypothesis? You might hypothesize that maybe the closer the relationship is, the higher or the more pro-social behavior will be observed. And how is the experiment look like? So give the concrete idea of how your experiments will be. What method is considered? So to answer this question, do you want to use fMRI, for example, to look at the brain, or do you only want to look at behavior, or maybe look at eye tracking, for instance. Up to you. So what are the expected results? So based on this specific design, based on these methods, what results you will expect to observe as if you are running these experiments. So the presentation is also 50 minutes, group presentation plus 5 minutes questions from both the students from the audience, also from me, okay? So here I really encourage everyone, not encourage, I would say everyone is required to talk, to talk at least about something. So you divide your role in this presentation. And then the group paper is related to the group presentation. So the same thing, the proposed experiments, you present it first and then you write it up. So write down the proposed idea based on the presentation and then the feedback you get from here. So that you will be questioned, sometimes maybe even challenged by your peer students, by your colleagues, by me also. So then there might be some questions, and then you will incorporate the feedback from students, from me, into your proposal and then to write it up. But don't treat these questions from me, from the students, very critically. So those, all of them are ways to help you improve your proposal. Okay, so this is the idea. And the group paper, a template will also be provided. So there is basically kind of a formula, you form, you fill in the forms, there are questions, and then it's a table, and then you just fill in the form. Any question regarding the group projects? Good. Okay, if no question regarding the group projects, so I will talk about the last assignment, which is the midterm paper. So why I talk about the group presentation first and then the midterm paper second, it is because the grouping will be the same as the group project. So again, we have the 4 main topics, and if you decide to work on motivation, and then your midterm paper will also be about motivation. So what this midterm paper about? The content, what you are about to write is a mini literature review on the topic you're interested in. And then you will base your mini review on the corresponding week's paired presentations and papers. So each week, there are only 3 papers or presentations, right? So read, first, it's not too many. So first, read the papers if you're interested in this topic, and then pay attention to the presentations. And also because there are 3, it's not too many. And maybe you want to do some literature search on Google Scholar, for example. I will also talk about how to use Google Scholar properly next Friday. So don't worry for now. So when you do some literature search, when you read the paper, listen to the presentation from your colleagues. So you write a few questions to use this knowledge to answer a few questions in this mini review, here the mini review. So here you will have to talk about what are the central questions within each topic. What is interesting, what are the interesting topics, questions in motivation, in social decision-making, for example. But do not be too broad. So social decision-making can be everything. As long as there are more than one person, it can be about social decision-making. So choose a specific aspect and then to write about it. So for example, again, pro-social decision-making. That's already a narrowed down topic rather than a broader topic, right? So after you introduce what are the central questions within the topic, you will then write about what are the typical research paradigms and methods within this topic. So for example, when researchers are studying pro-social behavior, what kind of experiments they use. And what's known already within the topic. So if you are interested in pro-social decision making, what the other people have already done previously, right? And then lastly, what are the future directions within the topic? So what are the future directions in pro-social decision making? Don't write it too long. So I really recommend all of you to write within 3 pages. Reference doesn't count here, but you of course have to add reference, but you write the reference afterwards. So your the main part of a paper shouldn't be longer than 3 pages. So here is a quick summary of the coursework I mentioned. So here, because the seminar is 6 credit points, ECTS, so it's actually equivalent to more or less 150 to 180 hours. So there will be 4 parts, so like listening, reading, presenting, and writing. So we'll listen to the lectures, and also sometimes I will give you the links of the videos you have to watch. You don't have to, but I encourage you to watch. Reading, so each week's paper, it is very likely that if you do not present the paper, you might not read it. It's quite likely from experience. I know how that works, but I really encourage you to read the paper. So each week there are only 3 papers, not too many. So if you do not have the time to read the entire paper, at least read the title, read the abstract to know what that paper is about. And then you might have questions, and then bring your question to the next lecture, and then you ask the presenters, okay? So reading each week's paper 3, as well as other papers that you might find useful in preparation for your midterm paper. So the topic the topic I mentioned earlier. So if you are interested in pro-social behavior, for example, the papers that are presented is not too many. To do some literature search and then to see what researchers has been done in response to this question. Presenting here, paired presentation, and also the group project presentation. Writing, one is midterm paper, the other one is the final group paper. The midterm paper is like the individual work. You write your own midterm paper. The final group paper is a group work. You will write as a group. So how to divide which person writes what, and this is totally up to you. So there's a question, it says, so do we do all topics regarding our group project interest? No, you choose one from the 4. So yes, there are 4 main topics. So the group project will be about one of them. So you will make your choice. You express your interest. So if you want to do this, okay, and then your group project will be about this. Or do you mean you want to combine them? So of course you can do risky decision making together with social decision making. Yeah, the midterm paper. No, the midterm paper, the grouping is the same as this. So if your group presentation will be about social decision making, then your midterm paper will also be about social decision making. So this is because you will have more knowledge in this field, right? In this topic. So imagine if you write in your midterm paper about motivation, and then later you do your group projects in social decision making. So there is kind of a switch. So the papers you learned, you read for your midterm paper will just be, let's say, just wasted, right? You cannot use the knowledge in preparation for your group project. So I would say to keep it consistent. You read papers during midterm, and then you get some knowledge about the topic, and then later to propose an experiment within the same topic for your group final project. Make sense? I guess yes. Okay, here grading. Regular participation 20%. I will count it only from a possible first physical session. I have no idea. So if we continue like this for the entire semester, everyone will basically get it. Don't worry about that, okay? You don't have to give signature or whatever, because you can always watch the video afterwards. So don't worry about this part. The paired paper presentation, 20% in class over Zoom, we can do that. Midterm paper, 15%, not too much. The deadline is the 17th of May. This is Sunday, I believe. And also the last one is group presentation, 20%. It will be held on 2 sessions. One is the 17th, the other one is the 24th in June. And then the paper, 25%, deadline is the end of semester. So 1 month after the lectures are finished, the 31st of July. And then for both of this midterm paper and group paper, to be fair to people who hand in time, so if you give it to me a little bit over the deadline, so half of the point will be deducted, okay? Just to make sure this is fair. But I guess all of you will give this in time. So grading, so to achieve a 1, so above 90%, and then to achieve a 2 is 81, and then here 71, 61, and then to pass it is 61% to get the credit points. So imagine here, this one, if we continue this way, you will get 20%, and then you will get here and there something from the other assignments. It is basically very easy to pass, so don't worry about that, okay? Any other questions? Yeah, no? So if not, I will show you a little bit more survey results, because I didn't finish everything. I will tell you later about this, okay? So here, this is the background of us. Have you participated behavioral experiments? It's like mostly never, but quite a few of you have taken some kind of experiments behaviorally. Neuroimaging study, no, nearly never, but some of you have taken neuroimaging experiment only once. Which year are you in for the bachelor study? Most of you are in the 2nd year, and also 3rd and 4th also. Have you taken lectures in English before? More than half said no, so this will be your first ones. What's your gender? This is quite surprising for me. It is because previously it's usually like in psychology more female than male, but now we have surprisingly nearly half-half. Amazing. How do you hear about this course? Okay, course catalog mostly, and also heard from colleagues. There are 2 questions from the chats. The presentation will be uploaded, yes. And when will we decide group presentation topics? So I will also try to set up the Moodle pool. So you have to decide which one you're interested in, also after Friday, okay? More survey results. Further questions regarding the course. So how deep is it going to go? I would say we only talk about the 4 topics, and each week we only have 3 papers, not too deep. Okay, but I will try to cover the details you're interested in regarding the 3 papers we have. Do we need to do a presentation? Yes, I said yes, so now you know it. How will the assignment look like? Now you know this after I introduce that. Is there any person that we can contact if we need help in English? Well, you can email me, but I don't know too much about German. What basic research skills do we need to learn? So this is also covered, right? Some literature review and presentation, scientific presentation, scientific writing. Is it possible to write group paper alone? No, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, no question. How will, yeah, assess? Yes, you know that also. Yeah, the grades also. Yeah, this one, not too much. Okay, good. So some statistics, some knowledge about experimental design. Some questions regarding the instructor, me in this case. So what do I do, right? This is the question basically. And then there's another question, if we have to write a paper, would it be possible to write in German? No, I'm sorry about that. Because I have to read it. As I said, I don't know too much about German, and this is very difficult if you write in German. Yeah, cool. Here, this question is interesting. Are there specific things you need to know before working in the field of neuroscience, biological psychology, or before you become actual neuroscientist? Well, you need to know the brain. You know where is where, which is which part is which. You also need to know the names of the brain, so at the anatomical level. You need to know experimental design. Again, you need to know statistics, but maybe quite in depth because you have to do your own research. You will see real data, and then you will need a little bit advanced knowledge to analyze your data, right? Some other questions, looking forward, me too. Is there supposed to be a Moodle course? Yes. I created a Moodle course already yesterday, and then I will regularly upload things there. Good. Here, considering all the previous questions, I don't know if I'm ready for the course. Well, I hope you are. You feel a little bit more ready for the course after I presented you all those content and how you will get graded. Okay, a little bit about me. So I said I'm now currently a postdoc at Scan Units. So it's the Professor Klaus Lamb's group. And previously, I did my PhD in cognitive or computational neuroscience in Germany, in Hamburg. And I did my master also in cognitive neuroscience in Spain. And then I did my bachelor in psychology, as all of you, in China. I'm originally from China. Office hours, not very important so far, so we stay at home, and you can just write me email. And my research, so I use quite some advanced statistical or computational methods to study decision making. So my overarching goal is to uncover the neurocomputational mechanisms underlying social decision making in the social context. The methods I use: behavioral testing, physiological measurements, cognitive modeling, and functional neuroimaging, fMRI. One of my previous projects is to study how social influence affects goal-directed learning. We mentioned goal-directed learning, right, already? So the goal affects which one you will choose. And then here I studied how social influence works, affects goal-directed learning. Current projects, because I'm in the Scan Unit, one of the main research topics is about empathy. So I will focus on the predictive process of pain perception and empathy for pain. As I said, I have a website if you're interested, so just go ahead. Further questions. So what knowledge is expected as a prerequisite? Some knowledge about statistics and also some knowledge about experimental design. To make sure everyone is on the same page, same level, lecture 2 and 3 next Friday again, we will have a refresher regarding the two topics. What level of neuroscience or biological foundation will be covered? So as I said, this is a seminar. The main goal is to know what can be done in this field. There are only 4 main topics, not too much in depth, even though I will try to cover the neuroscience part as much as I could. But keep in mind that this course is not neuroanatomy, right? If you are interested in the brain in general, maybe there are courses from MedUni, not from here, for biology department. So what we do is that we use neuroscience as a tool to understand what happens in the brain when people are making decisions. So this is, there is a comment from previous semester, and there's a student, and he asks that he's a little bit disappointed afterwards because not too much about the brain is covered, but basically, as what I said, this is not a course about the brain itself. We use the neuroscientific tools to understand decision-making. The last one is if or how can I improve my own decision-making through the course? Well, then difficult, not very directly. And this also varies from person to person. We will cover how decision-making can be decomposed, what will affect your decision-making. But even though you know that, how you make the actual decision is still up to you, right? So you recall that example I gave you, choosing between chocolate brownie and cucumber smoothie. This really depends on your goal, even though that you know your goal will really affect your decision making. If you want to have some food rewards, you want to treat yourself, maybe go for brownie. And if you're on a diet, maybe go for the smoothie, but not always the case. You can always make different or sometimes even counterintuitive decisions. But knowing how decisions can be made is a very good step to start with. Good. Anything else? Before that, I will talk about a little bit this very briefly. So how to get most out of the course. The course structure, I told you already, I will give a short introduction and then followed by paired presentation. And then the discussion will work together. There will be the group presentation, the group, no group debates. So there will be group presentation, group paper, paired presentation. Those will work together, ask questions. I know maybe some of you will feel a little bit shy, but just keep calm and stay at home. Don't feel shy and ask questions. With that being said, any questions? Are there any to-dos next Friday? Well, so recall the book chapter I sent, Neuroeconomics, the very first, like chapter 0, there is a chapter called like Introduction to Neuroeconomics. So I will appreciate it if you can finish reading that part. Not too many pages, I think, it's very short. If you have time, you can read the other chapters, but not very necessary. Oh wait, so I think the chapters I sent you, the last chapter, it's chapter 7 maybe, they cover research methods. So maybe also read that part. I will read the email, yeah. So the book, the beginning and the end. The beginning is the introduction and then the end is research methods. Other questions? Yeah, watch the talk, yes. Thanks for reminding. There is a link. Other questions? Anything unclear? Especially the assignments. Another question here. So is not knowing brain anatomy too bad? Well, no, I guess. You will see how they are labeled by reading the paper, I think. So for us, I give you a very short response to that question. So in neuroscience, nearly all of the high functioning brain areas are in the frontal cortex. So the frontal cortex is very important for us to know. And then knowing a little bit about the frontal cortex is enough. And also, if you read the book chapters I will send again, I guess, because some of you don't have it. Reading that book also helps in terms of knowing better about the brain. Anything else? Other questions? Any comments? Is the Moodle course online already? Yes, I think so. Yeah, but it's empty there now. I will upload stuff today, at least the slides. What is the course called? Do you mean this one? Decision Neuroscience? Is that what you mean? I think it should be the same. The pro seminar, you give the number of the course, right? Yeah, yes. Somebody else sent the link. Yes, I think so. Yeah. Other questions? Okay, so if you have no more questions, I thank all of you a lot for joining this challenging online session for both all of you and also me. And I guess we see each other